Thanks for joining this panel discussion. So tonight, Weclouddata invited two alumni and our graduates who recently worked on the data engineering real client projects to share their experience with the projects. They've also done 2 to 3 capstone projects during the bootcamp. So if you would like to know more about their bootcamp experience, we'll talk about them as well. I'm sure you're here because you're interested in knowing what is real client project and how that could help you, improve your experience and skill sets. So this is what this session is about. I prepared 6 questions. I'll leave more time for you guys to ask questions to the panelists. So without further ado, let's get started. Let me maximize the screen. All right. So first of all, we have invited 2 alumni to join this panel discussion. They are Joshua Omalewa, who's currently a data analyst at TD Bank Canada, and he also works as a data engineer at Beam Data. And Aravind Kumar, who recently graduated from the bootcamp as well. He works as a data engineer at Beam Data, and Beam Data is the consultancy that we run. And students, join these, work at Beam Data on real client projects. So I'm sure they will share more experience with you. I think you'll particularly be interested in what kind of projects they work on, how they have, what their experience are like in the real client project. So let's get started with the first question. Joshua, Aravind, maybe you guys can, do a quick self-introduction and tell us about yourself, whether it's your background, the projects you've done, or any kind of project experience you would like to share with us. Joshua, you want to go first?
Yes, sure, absolutely. I can go first. So, hello everyone. My name is Joshua Omalewa, and I'll just give a brief background about myself. I currently work as an analyst with TD, and I also work as a data engineer consultant with Beam Data. And some history about myself. My background exactly is in engineering. I actually studied structural engineering. Then I made the pivot to go into data. And I would say the bootcamp with Weclouddata was very instrumental to my pivot. So I worked on 2 projects during the bootcamp. One was a retail store project, and my capstone project was a real-time stock trading project, which I implemented from scratch based on the skills I learned. And yeah, that would be a brief history about myself. I don't know if there's any other information you want me to talk about.
Thanks, Josh. I know you recorded your capstone project presentation and put it on YouTube, so maybe later on you
Yes.
can get a link. I was always very impressed by your projects. When the first time I saw the video, I was really wowed. It was pretty well done. So if anyone would like to know what type of capstone project Joshua has done, you can check out his YouTube channel. Hey, Aravind, how about you? Give us a quick self-introduction, please.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Arvind Kumaran. So I currently work with Beam Data as a data engineer. So a little bit about my background. So I was actually a career switcher. So I completed my bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. And from there, I got a chance to look into different field. Like I was planning to move into IT, and then I got introduced to this data field. So it was very interesting at first, and then I was looking for some guidance over there because as a career switcher, it's hard for me to go and learn everything through online. I didn't have any mentor, so actually I got to know about this Wecloud through one of my friend who also completed I think one batch before me, and then I started with Wecloud, and there were so much learnings. There were some pre-bootcamp materials where I got into SQL and Python coding. So that was my initial start. And then from there, I was learning all these cloud and AWS thing. So I would say it was very challenging for me as a mechanical engineer and learning all these tools. But it was, I would say like that's too much challenge. And I put a lot of effort in understanding the core and basics of it. And yeah, it was too good for me. The journey was very good, and still I'm learning every day. Day to day, my work is like I work with some data science team as well. So there's I involved in some end-to-end project and doing the pipeline. Yeah, so far it's very good, and hope to continue the work.
Awesome. Thanks, Arvind. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I guess I only have 6 questions, so I would like to understand why did you choose Weclouddata, or why did you choose data engineering? And then I'll have questions about your capstone projects, and then we can focus on talking about the real client project you guys have worked on. So this question is, why did you choose data engineering bootcamp and also Weclouddata? I guess there are not a lot of data engineering boot camps out there. So maybe you can also talk about why you chose data engineering instead of like data science, AI, data analytics. There's so many data related programs. So yeah, tell us about it. Joshua, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So for myself, why I decided to pivot into data engineering is because of my background. I actually took the IBM data analyst certification initially, and I realized that I was not someone who loves doing visualization and presenting my visualization. I'm more on the technical side because my background was in engineering. So I wanted something that was more technical, and I had the option of picking either a data scientist or a data engineering role. And I went with data engineering because I wasn't so good with statistics. So that was why I chose data engineering. And in my research, I wanted something that was structured, and I saw a lot of options. I saw Brain Station, and I saw some other boot camps, not in Canada, because I'm currently based in Canada. But when I came across WeCloud Data Bootcamp, I realized that they're actually present in Canada, specifically in Toronto. Then I spoke to some alumni to know more about the program. And one who actually graduated from the bootcamp, his name is Stan. He works with Telos. So he spoke to me. We had like a call, and he told me that, yeah, it's a great program. And one of the key features I love about the bootcamp is you're learning the latest technologies. So you're learning about cloud, you're learning about data warehouse using snowflakes, and everything is very structured and practical. And not just that, the bootcamp also offers mentorship. So once you're done with you've learned all the technologies, you also have mentorship. So you're not alone. You have a mentor who would be a practicing data engineer that will guide you on how you can transition to get to land your first role. And yeah, that was the reason why I chose Weclouddata. The curriculum was up to date with the latest technologies. The teachers, our instructors, are actually practicing data engineers, which was unique compared to other bootcamps I've seen, which the instructors are just teachers and not professionals. They're actually practicing data engineering. And that was why I chose WeCloud to transition into data engineering.
Thanks, Joshua. Just a small correction. I think you mentioned Brain Station. They're also based in Canada. I think they're actually from Canada, but they also have campuses in the US. Very good bootcamp as well. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, I didn't realize that you talked to Stan before you joined the program.
It was
Yeah,
there
he was our alumni quite a few years ago. And he did his master's with York as well. But I think he's been working as a senior data engineer for quite a few years now at Talos, so he's very experienced. Yeah, I'm glad you talked to him before you picked the boot camp. Aravind, how about you?
Yeah, so the reason why I chose data engineering is because I know that the key player behind all these data role is the data engineer, but he's someone who works behind the scenes. He's not visible to everyone, but he's one key player. So I wanted to be a part of that. And the reason for choosing Wecloud is I would say I saw this structure of the course. You cover a lot of tools, which is currently available in the market. Like when I look for the data engineering jobs and look at the job responsibility, so I think we cover almost like 80% of those tools, which is in our latest data stacks as well. So that was one reason. And the other main reason is we have a client project here. So that would give me more of confidence. Once I come out of the boot camp and go and apply whatever I studied in the client project and learn how to manage those project, and then work with other team members as well. So yeah, that was the one reason. I think that's the main reason why I choose to be cloud.
Thanks, Aravind. Yeah, I remember we were pretty impressed by the project you did, the real client project. Actually, Aravind worked on one of the projects that's directly related to Weclouddata, and we're building some generative AI applications, and he was involved in that and did all the data ingestion, scraping, and also using Airflow to do workflow automation. So we were quite impressed, and that's why actually we just gave an offer to Aravind. I don't think that's the end of the journey for him, but he's working with us right now, helping us to teach data engineering in the boot camps we're just launching in Saudi Arabia. So that's quite exciting. But it's all because he did really, really well in the real client project. So he's a teaching assistant there. But yeah, would love to hear your experience there as well. So let's move on to the third question. Can you tell us about your data engineering capstone projects during the bootcamp? So when you join Weclouddata's bootcamp, you will be working on 2 to 3 capstone projects, because the data engineering program basically has 3 parts: analytics engineering, big data engineering, and we also have some advanced topics such as data lakehouse, Kafka, real-time data streaming. And so, yeah, so this question is related to the capstone projects. And after graduation, some student will opt into the real client project, not everyone. For the student who's in need of the real client project to build up their experience, they will work with our clients. And yeah, I think the next question is related to the real client project, but this question is about your capstone projects. So feel free to tell us about the projects you've done, the end-to-end pipeline, anything you would like to share. Yeah. I based on my experience, I know like the first project was usually challenging because you had to learn AWS, data warehouse, Snowflake, and Docker, and it's quite new especially for career switchers. And some students actually didn't enjoy the experience because they're scrambling everything, and it's very time consuming to even just pull it off. But I think starting from the second project, I think maybe the experience will be a lot better, because you start to sort of get more comfortable with learning a lot of new tools. And sometimes you just need to learn on the fly, because no one can teach you everything. But would love to hear your experience. Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So my experience in terms of the custom project with Wecloud data. So I would say before the first project, we actually have mini projects that we do based on the topics you're learning. So if you're learning Python, there's like mini project for Python, Linux, so even Docker. So those projects actually helped me in my first capstone project. So the first capstone project I worked on was for a retail store. So we had like the transactional database sitting in Snowflakes, and I had to create an ETL pipeline. What ETL means is basically extracting the data, you're transforming it and loading the data. So in terms of extraction, we had to use like the Snowflakes pipe to ingest the data. Then I had to use like AWS services like EC2. So the EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine, was running Airflow, which I used to orchestrate the whole pipeline. And in terms of data transformation, I used Spark, which is a well popularly known processing tool for big data. So that was what I used. Then I loaded the data into an RDS database on AWS. Then I just did some visualization using Power BI. So being able to build the first capsule project was building a batch pipeline end to end. So it was, for me, it was challenging, but I learned a lot about building an end-to-end solution for a data pipeline. For the second capstone project I worked on, so we are given the liberty to work on earning streaming pipeline. And the difference between the batch pipeline and streaming pipeline was the streaming pipeline, the data is continuous. So what I decided to do was to build a stock streaming pipeline. So I was ingesting the data from a stock API. So it was quite challenging, to be honest. And then in terms of the ingestion, I used Apache NiFi, which we were taught in the bootcamp. Then I used AWS EC2, which is the virtual machine for running all the applications like Apache NiFi, the Visium for chain data capture. Then also in the project, I used Kafka, which is an event messaging queue to ingest the data into the topics. Then I used Spark streaming for processing the data, the streaming data, and then I connected my Power BI and Tableau to Athena to show the stock update in terms of the candlestick in real time. So as soon as the data is coming in, you're seeing the candlestick chart going up and down. So it was quite challenging, to be honest, but I got a lot of support from the teaching assistant, like Stan. Stan was really helpful in troubleshooting some of the issues I had in my project. And yeah, those are like the two main projects that I worked on that has really helped me to build my data engineering skill set.
Thanks, Joshua. Arvind, how about you?
Yeah, so about the project experience, so I would say like in my bootcamp, I'm the one who is not actually in sync with the current class, as I have to do a lot of learnings after the lectures because understanding those basic concepts when I was, before the first capstone project was kind of hard for me, knowing all these cloud tools. So I was a lot of confused with why I learn all these tools. But when we start the first capstone projects, so that is where everything makes sense, like why all these tools were used and how to integrate all these to achieve some work. So I would say like capstone gives me more confidence in learning all these tools. So if my project requires me to learn something new, so I don't have any fear. Like okay, I can just go on Google it and learn it in 1 or 2 days and just install in Docker and learn all those tools. So that's the confidence I got from these capstone projects.
Oh, that's a really good point. I think especially for career switchers, and sometimes we often heard from students saying that they have fear about learning new things or they're afraid that cannot catch up. But I think one of the goals of the bootcamp is actually just to put you in an environment where you have to learn quickly, in order to get the project done. And I think it's not just the tools that you've learned, because tools will change. But I think you gain a lot more confidence in just like, you can figure something out, whether it's Google, Stack Overflow, or maybe now ChatGPT. But as long as you know how end-to-end projects like, data pipelines work, I think you can change tools, right? Because different companies will use different tool stack as well, but you sort of have a high level understanding of how things work, and how things can be integrated together. That's really important. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. But not just for Weclouddata. I think any type of bootcamp you join, if it's designed in a very practical way, that's, I think, the most important thing you're going to learn in a bootcamp. So next question, can you tell us about the real client project you've done? And yeah, tell us about the project, the client, or I know students sometimes can work on 2 to 3 projects depending on the scope. Some students will choose to work on smaller projects and then they get to work on more projects, and some students will choose to just focus on one big project. Yeah, I'd like to hear your project experience. Yeah, so please go ahead and let us know.
I think Arvin can go this time.
Yeah, Arvind, you wanna go first? I think you're still in the you haven't completed your real client project. So technically speaking, you're still with us. You haven't fully graduated. But yeah, tell us about the projects you've done, or maybe the tools and the pipelines you've sort of been working with.
Okay, so I work for Beam Data. So one project is for the Wecloud itself. So where we are kind of building a chatbot where students can go and ask any questions related to the data science bootcamp or data engineering bootcamp, and they will get the answers related to that. So those answers actually, what you get through Stack Overflow or the YouTube side as well. So that is the kind of thing what we are trying to build. And I work as a data engineer, like building an end-to-end pipeline. So that starts with scraping the data from different sources and then pre-processing those data and ingesting into a vector database. So that's a very new thing which I got introduced, and that's one of the I think that's the latest stack. Like I work with the Elasticsearch vector database, and so we ingest data to it, and so the data is actually kind of a vector data, what we say here. Those are very new terms which I learned. Like it's kind of cross-functional with data science team, and that's a really nice experience to have an end-to-end knowledge of the project. And so I mostly work with Airflow, trying to orchestrate entire project and ingest the data to Elasticsearch. And also there is another project which I did. So that is with the health client. I think Empower Health, that's the client. So I work with the end-to-end data scraping pipeline. So I tried to set up the pipe. So that was, I would say, like it was a 2 months project for me. So where I built the end-to-end pipeline to scrape from different sources and try to compare the results with the client's database, and then try to let them know like what are the changes happening in their database. Yeah, so the additional thing which I actually learned in this client project is like how to convey something to the clients, like how to set up a meeting with them, like how to, and then how to walk them through the solutions which we have. So we have to do, some research on tools when we are building the architecture. So we might have like 4 to 5 solutions for it, and then we have to walk them through like each of them and like what is doing. So what's the advantage and disadvantage of each tool, and then try to come up with one pipeline, the architecture. So that was a really interesting thing, like trying to build the architecture first and then getting the user requirement as well. So these are something which you will actually get it from the real client project experience.
Thanks. I wasn't familiar with the second client projects you did. Was that a startup or was?
Yeah, it's with the Empower Health.
Oh, okay. Healthcare startup. Okay, cool. Well, that's very interesting. Because you sort of did that presentation, right, to the team on the first project you did, which is the chatbot. I think you guys are working with it like Elasticsearch and also the vector databases. So I was actually very impressed with that presentation. I remember you guys showing that architecture diagram in the cloud, touching on like, AWS and all the pipeline stuff. So yeah, that was very interesting. I didn't know that you actually did another project with 2 months.
Yeah, so I was doing parallelly on both the projects. So so
Yeah.
that's even more interesting. Like, you have to commit to both projects and you have some limited time on to work with both. And
Yeah.
I tried to manage both, and it was really
Okay.
good.
Okay, that kept you busy. But that's cool. Yeah. So I think we have a question from Mitch. Mitch, you wanna? Sorry, Michelle. You wanna? Feel free to speak up.
Thanks. It's Xiaohua, right?
Oh yeah, this is Xiaohua. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, no, first I wanted to say I'm not sure how you guys were going about questions, but I know chat is turned off, at least that's how it's coming through in my session. Um, I just wanted to sort of ask when it comes to, and whichever graduate feels the best about it can answer this. When it comes to data engineering, at least the impression I get is when you're trying to break into the field, it isn't exactly, I'll say, junior friendly. So my question would be like, if you were to go to an interview and sort of finish the statement, like, I'm not a junior in this field because, um, like, like when it comes to you sort of selling yourself as a mid-level, like, what kind of things, would you guys say, um, makes you more of a mid-level candidate at this point?
That's a very good question. Who would like to answer this question? I know Joshua has been interviewing lately, so maybe you can. I don't think Aravind has started. He's still working on the project, so maybe Josh, you can tell us about your recent job interview experience, maybe. Yeah, how you address this.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question, Michelle, that you asked. Because that was the first concern that I had when I first finished the bootcamp before joining the Recline project. But one thing I'll tell you is that the real client project actually bridges the experience gap. Because I know from the bootcamp you have some projects that you worked on, but the real client project is what gives you that experience. So for myself, for data engineering interviews I've gone for, first thing they would test is your coding skills. That's usually like the first round. So that's SQL and Python, which you learn from the bootcamp. So you need to be good at that. Then when it comes to the actual interview with the hiring manager, like for myself, I recently had an interview with Amazon. And part of it was also the coding round, but the technical round with the hiring manager was more about my real client project. No, I don't call it real client project because it's actually experience. So they were asking me, okay, I know you're working with a watch startup, like what did you actually do there? What were the technologies you actually worked with? And for myself, I was able to speak confidently because I worked on the project myself. So I spoke about using AWS Lambda to orchestrate the whole pipeline. I spoke about the data ingestion strategy I implemented in the real client project. So I believe that when you talk about what you know, they are able to assess based on your resume. Okay, he talked about AWS, he talked about Snowflake for data warehousing, talked about streaming pipelines. So that way they're able to assess if you are a junior or you are an intermediate level. But from my experience, because I've interviewed for both senior data engineering position and just entry-level data engineering position, and what they just want to know is your experience and how you worked on those technologies. So if you are able to speak confidently to your skill set, that's usually really good.
Thanks. I just had one follow-up. Have you worked much with DBT?
Yes, so right now the curriculum with Weclouddata has been updated to include DBT because it's a new tool. So right now I'm actually learning that tool itself because I finished my bootcamp that was last year, but the curriculum has been upgraded to include DBT now. So I'm currently learning that on my own at my own time right now in terms of the data build tool for data transformation. So I'm learning it right now.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so you were probably the last cohort before we made the curriculum upgrade, right?
Yes,
So
I
I
was the
probably
last one.
Aravind went through the DBT stuff, but basically the first capstone project you guys will be working on is a DBT project. So you'll be doing data ingestion using Apache Airbyte. It's ELT. Used to be ETL, but it's now ELT. So you ingest the data into staging in Snowflake, and then use DBT and SQL for transformation. And then you have to set up like everything using Docker on AWS yourself. And also, I think the last step is the visualization using Metabase, something like that. But yeah, so DBT is something we decided to add because it's very hot right now. And that's why the first project is actually geared towards, I think, targeting analytics engineering jobs. And the second project is like Spark and streaming. Well, that's the big data engineering related. So yeah, so we have 3 different components. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for the question, Mitch. It's very good question. So I guess the next question is also related to that. So how did the RCP help you improve your skills or and experience? I think Josh, you sort of answered this question already. You're actually going through your work. You're still working on the real client project and also going through some interviews with Yelp and AWS, Amazon. That's really good. I hope you get a job very soon. And Arvind, you want to maybe talk about like the RCP, like experience? I know you haven't started job search and then we give you an offer, but that's, that's a teaching contract. I'm sure you will jump into the job market very soon after that as well. So yeah, tell us about your experience and how you think that has helped you with the skill sets, or how does the real project like differ from the capstone projects, I guess, from your perspective?
Okay, yeah. So let me just start with the Wecloud project, capstone project. So there I learned a lot of tools. I also try to integrate different tools to complete my project. So that is just as I would say, like it's a smaller picture. So if we come to the real client, so where you apply all these skills in a bigger picture, like I would have to look at what are the best practices around these tools. So like why we choose these tools to for our architecture and what is the limitations around those tools. So we have to do more research on it before we select something, because the everything is included with the price. So we don't want you to process something with a larger price. So we always try to look at the documentation, read more. Like every day I used to research something before I put into the next meeting, like when we talk about the projects, the tool selection or something. So I always go and do some research. So the confidence which I'm getting is like, okay, I know something end to end. So if I'm choosing Lambda, so like in Lambda, I know like what are the things we can do with Lambda. So I know I try to master one particular tool. So in that way, in real client projects, I mostly work with Airflow, Lambda, and some of the GPU instances slow. So those are all very new to me. And yeah, I would say like every day it's a learning, and you have to keep on learning and updating with all new tools which is coming. So you cannot say like, so this one I didn't learn in the boot camp, but the project requires it. But still you have to go and, apply those for your project and learn every day.
Cool, thank you. Now, let's move on to the last question before I introduce the real client project in more detail. Do you have any suggestions for career switchers who are interested in pursuing a data engineering career path?
I think I can take this question first because I'm actually a career switcher. Okay, so first thing is do more research on data engineering job, because it requires a lot of effort. You have to put a lot of effort learning a lot of different tools, and these tools won't be constant. Like the market is keep on changing, and you will be get introduced to new tools. So what you have to make sure is your mindset is like you are ready to learn anything which is coming up. So that's the first thing. And also try to do the pre-bootcamp material which we have. Like I think we have like SQL and Python pre-bootcamp materials. So go through that and actually look whether you are able to solve all those, and do you have interest continuing this. So that would be the first point I would say.
Thanks, Arvind. And Josh, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, so for people, for anyone that wants to switch careers into data engineering, one thing I would say is first is to understand what data engineering is about, so that you have like an high level understanding of who data engineers are, what do they do in companies. So once you have that understanding, then the next thing is what are the skills required to become a data engineer. And from my own understanding, a structured curriculum like Weclouddata will help you learn the skills needed to become a data engineer. You also have mentorship that will help you in terms of prepping your resume and preparing you for interview. For me, that was really valuable. Um, yeah, those are like the two advice I would give. Be curious, be willing to learn. It's not going to be easy, to be honest, because you're learning a lot of tools. You need to know how to program, but be patient and learn. And like Avin said, there will be a pre-bootcamp material that will be offered to you. I personally went through it to refresh my Python skills, my SQL skills, because that will really help you in the bootcamp. And one thing I want to say about the Real Client project is you're working in teams. So you're getting the experience of actually working in a data engineering team. So you're not just the only one doing the pipeline end to end. You're interfacing with client to discuss about your project, your challenges, and that way you're able to build real life experience. Because we have a project team lead that will assign the tasks, just as you are working in a data engineering company. You have a project team lead that will assign the tasks, then you work on it your own. You have the help. You can search on Google. You can talk to your teammate to troubleshoot any issue you have. So for me, yeah, the Real Client project is really good, and that's the advice I would give to career switchers.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time and sharing your experience. I'm going to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes just to conclude this session. I'll introduce, the Real Client project and also different options with Weclouddata's Data Engineering Bootcamp. But first of all, I think when you work on, any kind of projects, right? When you go through a bootcamp or self-paced learning, you'll definitely need to work on projects. So one type of project is the personal projects or capstone projects. These are very valuable. This is one of the examples. Our alumni built like end-to-end data pipeline. It all varies because we give you some sort of skeleton and template, but you don't really have to build exactly the same pipeline. And sometimes we almost like on purpose, like purposefully like teach students to over-engineer things a little bit, even though I think in real life, after you've worked on real client project, I think both of you guys mentioned that you learn best practices. It means you're not always going to use the most powerful or the most fancy tool and put them together in a project. You're not guaranteed to get the best results because along the way you have to make a decision. Like I think Aravind mentioned like GPU. So or I think you scrape like Stack Overflow and then we have to use Spark. But then the decision is that it's just too expensive approach. We would love to use Spark, but does it make sense for this project, right? So I think you're learning to make a lot of small decisions along the way, or at least, in the team, you're going to learn how this kind of decisions are made. But we teach them to over-engineer a little bit so that they actually learn more. But I think when it comes to real client project, you realize that sometimes the projects you did with the real client might actually be easier from an architect perspective, but you're solving real problem. And I think oftentimes data engineers will need to make decisions on what tool to use, right? You have to deliver a project or end-to-end pipeline within the time frame. And then you also have a budget, whether you use Lambda or you run EC2 instance, well, lots of decisions to make. And I think that is the experience employers will be looking for. But again, I think personal projects are very important. It helps you build up your skills. And just like, for data science, students will need to work on Kaggle projects just to practice their skills, right? And after you've learned, especially I think data engineering is different from data science in a way that you actually have to learn way more tools. With data science, I know you have to learn machine learning, deep learning, visualization, but you can just use Python to achieve all of those, right? But with data engineering, you have to learn AWS, Docker, you have to learn a little bit CI/CD, and then you have to learn Spark, all of these, many different tools. It could be overwhelming if you don't work on a project. You just don't know how they work together, right? How do you put them in one project? So the personal project, absolutely critical. And then of course, we have the real client project. I think that's the part where, it helps you fill experience gap. Because I think Mitch had a really good question, like how a lot of the data engineering positions might be a little bit intermediate to senior level. So how do you even prove to people that you not only know the tools, but also know how to actually solve problems when you get hired into companies? And I think the real project can really help because it's not just like using the tools, it's problem solving. And it's working with the client, clarifying requirements, right? Making some decisions, with the team, with the clients, and just, get your ideas, your thoughts across and make sure people can understand it. And all of these together, I think that's experience you need. It's not guaranteed that like when you work on a real client project, you're going to get a job, but it's absolutely going to help you get more interviews, I think. The value of the real client project is definitely that you'll have more stuff to put on your resume, right? So this is an example from our data science students, but the student had a PhD, so I think she's really advanced degree, and she worked on the data science projects in the boot camp, but she also did 2 real client projects with us, so that really helped her, and she actually got the job. With the first interview she got, she nailed it, and she just got a job. It was really smooth experience for her, but the job market is pretty tough right now, so it's not definitely you have to try, and you have to you will fail a couple of times or many times, but if you persist, right, I think you'll definitely be successful, because after the boot camp and the real client project, students definitely are very skilled, but whether you can get an offer, it takes some other skills, such as communication skills, your confidence level in the interviews when people ask you about your experience. Those are all really relevant and important. Okay, just 2 diagrams to help you understand the difference, of a real client project. For example, if you work on personal projects, you will be building up your skills, right? In the boot camp, you'll learn data modeling, data ingestion, ELT, data lake. Maybe you, after working on the personal projects, you know how these tools work together, right? But you haven't developed the complete skill sets required for a job, right? Because when you work on the real client project, there are things that it's kind of hard to teach in a program, right? For example, when you when you start to work with a client, if it's a completely new project starting from scratch, then you need to understand the business needs, right? I remember there was a pretty big project we did last year. We were building a data warehousing project for a client in the Azure cloud, and then there are thousands of tables that we have to deal with, and the first step is really just to understand the 4,000 tables. There's no way you can just go through them manually in the SQL server database. It just takes too much time, and you actually have to write some Python scripts and SQL scripts to automate this process. And you'll do data profiling for 4,000 tables, and you have to quickly identify issues in the data, and also try to build reports and understand their data, because the client is not going to have time to teach you everything. You have to learn. They have documentation that's nearly enough for us to understand how things work. And it's hard to book meetings with their IT department or their developers because they're super busy. You just have to learn yourself. And I think students on this project really learned a lot. So they did like feasibility analysis, right? And you have to educate the client and tell them like, okay, this is why we think using the Azure Databricks don't make much sense here. We would rather go with the DBT and Data Factory and Synapse approach. So I think we have to do a lot of research and decide what is the best tool to use. And then also after you implement the project, you have to go through like UAT, right? User acceptance testing. For example, if you build a warehouse, then we actually worked with their BI developer and just create a small like a data mart for them so that they can migrate their existing dashboard from, I think they use Tableau, migrate that from Tableau to Power BI, but it's using the data warehouse and data mart we built for them. It was very successful, and then the client has the confidence for us to sort of move ahead and deploy everything. So these are some of the skills, I think, or experience that you're going to gain in these real client projects, right? And also, you'll be doing research on tooling, learn a little bit more about compliance and governance if the client cares about it. And also, as I think Aravind mentioned, you actually sometimes have to come up with data architecture and show the diagrams to the client, and you have to update it. That sort of, that kind of experience help you, learn more and grow faster in the data engineering role. So I think these are the benefits of a real client project. So now let me introduce the bootcamp to you. If you're interested in learning data engineering with Weclouddata, there are 3 options now, actually. If you're a career switcher starting from scratch, then we have a 6 months part-time training bootcamp. It includes the portfolio projects. Real client project is optional. So the bootcamp itself doesn't include real client project. because we have a lot of students like Joshua who actually have a full-time job, maybe working as a data analyst. So you can't really do the school and real client project at the same time. It's just too time consuming. So some students will finish the 6 months training, and then they will have more time. They free up the time to focus on the real client project. So that's optional. But regardless, in the boot camp, you'll receive 6 months of career mentorship, which is one-on-one. You get paired with a mentor who usually work in the data engineering field, and they will give you, help you with resume and interview practice as well. When it comes to boot camp, we'll start from data engineering fundamentals. Some of those will be covered in the pre-boot camp. As I think Josh mentioned, we also have some advanced Python, but those are the Python stuff we teach in the boot camp. Amazon Web Services. So we consider these as the fundamentals. And then we move on to the modern data stack. That's the new curriculum. So that's teaching you analytics engineering skills, basically building modern data warehouse. So that includes data ingestion, ELT, reverse engineering, and also, with a focus on dbt pipeline and Snowflake data warehouse. And after that, the second big module will be big data engineering. This is where we introduce NoSQL database, Apache Spark, Azure, Azure Cloud, Data Factory. So there's a capstone project there as well. So you learn how to run Spark data ingestion in the Azure Cloud. And then the third component is streaming data processing. So that's the third module, which introduces some of the more advanced data engineering topics. And after the 6 months, student will work with a mentor on one-on-one coaching on the career side. Some students prefer to delay that because they want to focus on the real client project, but these two can happen at the same time. So you can save some time. It really depends on the student situation, and we try to be flexible about it. Now, if you already have IT or strong software engineering skill set, or you already have done some data engineering work and you're in the job market, we do have the real client project only option. Usually this is recommended for bootcamp graduates. If you're so if you opt into the real client project at the very beginning, then you'll get like a package and some discount. But just so you know, you can only purchase the real client project, but you have to pass the assessment. I want to make sure you can actually do the work. Otherwise, these are real projects. If you are not able to catch up, then it's a little bit hard for us to justify that to the clients. But in the real client project, you will receive onboarding training. It's not a boot camp type of training, but we do cover a lot of data science, data analytics, and data engineering skill sets. So there's some onboarding training material we're going to put you through. And a lot of times you need to learn on the fly. You get to work on 2 to 3 client projects with a duration of 6 months. So some students will like to spend 2 months on each project. And sometimes when you go with a client, that client might want you to spend, more time with them. So, but anyways, the duration is 6 months. And then careers mentorship is optional. For the students who are enrolled in the boot camp, they always, get the mentorship, but it's optional. If you just want to focus on the real client project, you can opt out of the career mentorship. The third option, I'm not even sure if Josh and Aravind are aware. We are actually launching a self-paced data engineering program. When it's self-paced, of course, the price will drop, but this is the benefit you're going to get from this program. So when you make a decision, it really depends on which package works better for you. First of all, it's completely self-paced. You'll be watching the recordings of the bootcamp and also the self-paced materials we're producing. Right, we're producing a lot of new content that you can watch. There's still a learning path, same learning path you have to go through, right? But if you're the type who actually can move faster, right? You don't want to wait for lectures to happen on a weekly basis, and you can just like churn through a lot of materials yourself, and maybe self-paced learning is better for you. And the content, more than 50 hours of content. And then you also get to work on 2 capstone projects. And how does that work? So first of all, you'll receive Slack support. So you can ask questions on Slack. And I think Aravind is involved in one of this project to use generative AI to provide support because when you ask a question, we're hoping to match really good content with you. And you also receive one-on-one mentoring. So now this is not career mentoring. Once a week, you get to talk to a project mentor, or it could be a learning mentor. Like let's say this week you don't at the very beginning you don't have career questions. You just want to focus on learning. Then you get to meet with a mentor. We call that learning mentor, and you can ask any questions. They can help you. But if you need more, so you can book time, right? If you prefer weekday evenings, you can book time with mentors who are available. But if you're full-time studying and you have questions even during the day, better to use Slack. Someone will support you, right? And also, we plan to add office hours. So on a weekly basis, we'll have office hours where you can actually drop in to ask questions, but those will be group sessions, right? Because we have multiple students in the session. So I'm actually curious to know, Josh and Aravind, this is probably the first time you guys hear about this option. Would you go with this option if you had the choice like 3 or 6 months ago?
For me, I would still prefer the live
You're into
session.
a live session, right? Okay,
Live
it's totally
session.
perfect. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. But just this is one more options we are adding, and you also get to work with your learning mentors on a weekly basis. So it may work for some students out there. That's about it. So our live bootcamp will start at the end of February. So you still have time to enroll. You need to complete some Python SQL quizzes for admission purpose. And then there's pre-bootcamp, and then the bootcamp itself is 6 months. But for the self-paced, then you can basically join anytime. But after you have gained the skills, you can join the real client project. So these are the 3 options. And the cohort afterwards, I think will be in I believe it's in May. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.